We will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is Tuesday, April 21st, 2020 at 4:31 p.m. We will begin this meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Borton?
Here.
Councilwoman Perot? Here. Councilwoman Strader, excuse me.
Here.
Councilman Hoagland?
Here.
Councilman Burnt?
Here.
Mayor Simpson?
Here.
And I believe absent is Councilman Luke Kavanagh.
Mr. Kavanagh is joining us right now. He was trying to get in the meeting.
Councilman Kavanagh, we're doing roll call. Are you here?
I am here.
Perfect. All right. Item number 2, adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
I move that we adopt the agenda as published. Oh, excuse me, one thing. We need to add, looking at my notes, we need to add a letter to our executive session. So letter D, and we get there, we can clarify.
Okay.
Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I second the adoption of the agenda as amended.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 3 is consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I second the consent agenda approval.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we will move into item 5A, our department reports, and we will hear from Dave Teedy for an information technology annual report.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council. I am here tonight before you with the Information Technology Department's annual report to council. Let's see if I have control to change the slides here. It's like I do. So our agenda tonight, I will try to be brief, but we'll give you a brief introduction to our IT team, what we do for the city and our community, our recent successes, including how we've reacted to the COVID-19 situation and remote work needs, and then also some upcoming budget needs. So with that, I'll just give you a little brief snippet of our mission and vision statements. We pride ourselves on being customer focused, friendly, and innovative with technology. One thing you also probably know or notice throughout our slides is we also like to have fun, and we like to infuse that in what we do. So hope that's represented well here for you guys. I'm going to start off with our service desk team, which you can see here on a slide, part of our service desk team. Our service desk team is represented by all the different services we have here on this slide, but I'll talk about a couple specifically. We handle technology purchasing for the city as a whole. So all technology purchases, hardware and software, come through the IT department, and that's so that we can vet them. We can make sure they're compatible with current systems. We can ensure that we're not purchasing software or hardware that we may have elsewhere that we could repurpose or reuse. Anyways, that's part of what our service desk team does. And then another item that I wanted to mention on this slide specifically is account management. So this encapsulates providing user accounts to our employees, to city council, and also includes administering permissions, access to systems, things like that. So it's very important to our overall information security program. So another item going on in this slide deck here. Next slide, if it'll switch for me. Provide all types of technical support. That's hardware and software support across the city. You'll see here we have a number of items listed. including audiovisual support, which means in the chambers, we support the technology in there, conference rooms. We do hardware and software support, any application that you can think of. We have over 300 applications in the city that we support, and we touch them all. And then we also handle in the field support. So our fire and police vehicles that have computer equipment in them, we service those. We provide technical support for them, make sure they're functioning up to date, as well as our inspection and public works teams. So our next team that I'll cover briefly is our software engineering team. So this is a list of some of our services we provide in software engineering. It's a very long list, and you'll see even further some of the applications we support on software engineering side on the next few slides. It's even longer. I'll cover a couple here though, just as a high level to give you some ideas. We do new software development. So if a department has a need for a new piece of software, when they request that from us, we consider, should this be something we do internally versus something we buy commercial off-the-shelf software for. So we do that because A, it's a cost savings to the city many times, but B, we can also provide software that's going to meet all of their business needs instead of 60 or 80% of their business needs. So again, very beneficial to the city and a really good service that we provide. Another service that I think is very unique to the city, or that we do exceptionally, is integration. So that's listed on the second, or on the first column there towards the bottom. This is really making two different systems talk to each other and work together. So I'll give you an example. We have our land management system, Excella, where we do all the permitting and whatnot throughout the city, right? Our community development department handles that, but we built an integration so that that information, as far as the financial side, can get dumped into our financial system as well. So that way it's not a manual process for somebody to go and pull that out, put it in the other system and run reporting and whatnot off of that. So we do a lot of integrations like that, and we do it well to the point where we actually get requests from other entities throughout the valley to help them or give them tips on it, because we do it pretty well. So this next slide is just a snippet of some of the applications that a couple of our software engineers support. If I can get it switched over here. Sorry, this remote control is a little slow to respond sometimes. So just gives you a little snippet of some of the applications we support. And the next slide, another snippet of some of the applications we support, including Excella, which is something that we have two software engineers supporting right now. We're looking to make some changes there, so that will be something that changes here this fall. And then the next thing I wanted to cover is we also handle web development. So we handle the content of the website. We rely on the city departments to provide the content to us, but we're the ones that put it up there, make it look pretty, make it search engine optimization compliant so that the Googles and everything else can find the content and index it so that people can get it at their fingertips easily. We also do ADA compliance and build custom applications for web-based needs. So a lot of fun stuff. Our next team that I wanted to cover is our GIS team. We work with many other departments throughout the city that have subject matter experts in the world of geographic information systems, including community development, public works, police, and fire. And this is the smattering of services that we provide throughout those different areas. A couple that I'd like to highlight quickly is automated data exchange for GIS. So you can see here, kind of towards the middle of the slide, there's a part called automated data, GIS data exchange. We work with other agencies throughout the valley, including Ada County, ACHD, Compass, to get their data and incorporate that into our GIS system for analysis and visualization through maps. But we also provide information to them as well. So we've taken it a step further here in the last few years, where we're actually able to automate most of that data exchange instead of manual back and forth labor every time that there is an update. So pretty significant. Another item or service I'd like to highlight on here is AVL, just because it's one that we're pretty proud of and we think it's pretty cool. So we have outfitted most of the city vehicles in the city, including police, fire, community development's inspection team, and most of water and some of wastewater with GPS tracking capabilities. These GPS tracking capabilities are through Cradlepoint devices. They're a local partner of ours. They provide not just GPS, but they also provide the data connectivity back to the city, so through a carrier and a VPN connection. But through this technology, we're able to track vehicle location information in near real time. We pick up points right now about every 3 seconds. We were doing 1 second at one point, but it was a lot of data. So with that type of data, we can do heat mapping things for law enforcement, so they can see, hey, look, in the last 24 hours, where did a lot of our vehicles spend their time? Were those higher crime areas, or where are community development inspection vehicles at this point in time? Where are the most inspections happening this day, type thing. So some really cool information that we can glean from AVL. The next slide, again, you'll see a little bit different taste on it. Again, we're a team that likes to have fun. So we'll see here, we went with a little bit different theme for our infrastructure team. So infrastructure really covers this wide variety of services that we have here, but a couple I'd like to highlight specifically are our data protection services, which means everything from backups to, oops, somebody deleted a file and they need it back, to, hey, look, we're in a situation where there is some major disaster or disruption that we have to go and get systems up at another location so that the city can continue to operate. So that's all encompassed within the data protection services that we have. And I would say they're pretty robust, as we can bring things up in a matter of hours if we were in the event to lose our data center at City Hall. So pretty cool. And then we also provide network and internet connectivity to all city facilities. So this covers all the main city facilities, including the police station and fire stations, water, wastewater, but we also have connectivity out to many different SCADA sites for the public works team, as well as managing connectivity for, again, a wide variety of fleet vehicles. So anyway, that's just a couple items on our infrastructure side. See if I can switch slides here. The next one that I wanted to cover here is also under infrastructure. So we handle project management for IT projects, and I'll talk about a couple projects here in a few minutes that we manage, but that means that we are the ones overseeing the project, working with the vendor to make sure that everything comes in, meets the time requirements, that we have resources, etc. And then we also handle information security across the board for the city. So that's cybersecurity, that's security awareness training for employees. That is in some spaces, meaning that we also are aware of and help with the physical security of certain aspects, especially when it comes to information that we house. So again, information security, very high priority and important for us. And it's something we do, I think we do reasonably well. I would say exceptionally well, but don't want to pat myself on the back too much. Next, I'd like to cover a few of our successes that we've had over the last year here. This is just a few highlights. In conjunction with our community development department, we partnered to work together towards electronic submittals and plan review phase 2 for community development. So we have gone fully electronic online for all electronic submittals for community development for that side of things. We're working on the planning side of things and land development. So those will be coming up in the next 6 to 9 months. But for the most part, everything else in community development is being done electronically. I'm sure you've probably heard Cameron talk about that a number of times in the past. We also worked to complete a number of server migrations. We actually migrated over 100 servers to a new operating system this last year. And that was a big undertaking. It was important for us from an information security standpoint, but also to make sure that we are compatible and up to date with applications as they continue to evolve and require newer hardware or software. So that was completed this last year. We also did many Windows 10 upgrades, with the exception of MDTs, which many will be replaced this fall. That was again for security requirements, but also to make sure that we are up to date with requirements from a software standpoint, as the various vendors that we work with were phasing out support for older operating systems such as Windows 7. Another project that you'll hear me talk about a little bit more in a minute is our enterprise content management system. We worked on phase 1 of this, and this is going to be an ongoing budget request that I'll talk about here more in a minute. So you'll hear more in a minute for that one. And then the other one that we did was our ITS RMS data migration. So we completed an ITS RMS project here last year, which was to bring all law enforcement records into this new records management system that we built in-house. And then this year we worked to migrate over 18 years of information from the old records management system into this new system. So a significant undertaking that our software engineering team worked with the police department's crime analysis unit and records staff on. Pretty cool accomplishment. So next thing I'd like to cover on successes is our reaction to how we've handled some of the different COVID-19 needs due to this unique situation that we're in. Sorry, getting calls. We have done near continual updates to the city website in conjunction with the mayor's office, public works, community development, and many other departments to make sure that citizens have the information that they need at their fingertips as to how to deal with the COVID-19 situation and what they need to have available to them. We have also been working a lot with people, with our employees, to make sure that they can work remotely. In fact, we stood up nearly 200 employees to be able to work remotely in about 2 weeks. So that was a pretty significant undertaking. And I think for the most part, most employees are up and working successfully from home, which is pretty cool that we could turn that around that quickly. So, and then the one that you're all aware of, obviously we're using this technology right now. We were able to get council and commission meetings working in a remote fashion. Big, huge kudos to the clerk's department for managing all this. It's probably a bigger lift on their end long-term than it is on ours, on the technology side, just because how they handle the workflow and process behind the scenes to make this all happen. So I will give kudos to them, but also say that we're pretty proud that we were able to get this up and working in such a seamless fashion, even though there were some bumps along the road. So next I will talk about our, jumping ahead here, our enterprise content management system. This is one of our upcoming budget needs that we have slated for this coming year. Enterprise content management really came around for us as we discussed needs on the document management needs of the city. So many different departments were running into challenges with, hey, we want to store these electronically, we want to do this electronically, we want to move more electronically, so we're not storing all these paper records or worrying about managing all these paper records. So a number of years ago, we decided that it was time for the city to have some type of system to handle this citywide instead of a few departments having their own silos of information. And last year, we were able to fund the first year of this project. That was phase 1 of 3 phases. So giving some more information about what this type of system can do, it would help with the it helps with the automation of records retention. So right now, a lot of that's manual work for many departments every year as we go through and execute the records retention schedule. This system would allow us to tag things and then have them handled in a more automated fashion that would still include city council for the actual destruction needs. And it also handles better searching abilities, revision control, notifications when documents change, things like that. So if we have policies that change, we can actually notify people based off of, hey, look, there's a change. We don't have to worry about manually managing that process. It also allows us to do a lot of things via forms and automated workflows. So a lot of power in this tool, and a lot of, we're really excited on where this is going to go, because we see a lot of efficiencies being created by this, including things like e-signatures and things like that. So pretty cool technology. We are actually, just for informational purposes, the city clerk's office has had the tool that we're using for a number of years, but we upgraded the system and added some features that will be coming out to other departments here. So And then the next budget request that we have this year is for communications infrastructure extensions. This is really a continuation of a long-term strategy that we have at the city for communications infrastructure. We have been partnering with ACHD and Public Works to look for opportunities to put conduit fiber equipment in where we can, when it makes sense for the long-term benefit of the city and the community. So right now, a couple of projects in the works where the city will actually have city-owned conduit and fiber in the future include the Chinden corridor, which will be beneficial for the city, but also could be something that we could lease out to other entities if there is a need at some point in the future, which we see being valuable to our community. And then we're also, this coming year, we're looking at a couple extensions in South Meridian along Eagle Road, I believe is one, and another one along Locust Grove. So that is that continued effort. And that covers our budget needs for this next year. With that, I think that covers my slide deck, and I'm trying to switch to the next slide here. With that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Mayor.
Dave. Council, do you have any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
not a question, but just a comment, and I guess it's kind of threefold. Dave, first off, your department does just such a great job. One of the things that I'm thoroughly impressed with is the team-based DNA that you and your staff have helped to develop. That doesn't come by accident. That comes from intentional leadership. And I just want to thank you and your department for that. To be able to build, I think, such a strong team while also continuing to serve our internal customers is nothing short of remarkable. And then to throw kind of getting all city employees the ability to work remotely during this crisis is really amazing. So I just want to say thank you to be able to continue to lead that department, to continue to retain great people who work so hard for our city employees. It's really, really remarkable and something that I hope you're proud of, and I hope your staff are really proud of, because I am.
Thank you, Councilman Cavanagh. Yes, we are proud of that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, Dave, echo a little bit what Luke said. You know, your software development where you've customized some things for our various cities departments have just, I've seen some of that stuff in action, and it's really amazing. My question is, how do you maintain the integrity of that product because it is customized when you do have turnover? It's unique, and someone's thought process went into it. Are you finding you're having success being able to enhance it as you go down the road without the original people there? How does that work out for you?
I'll have to say that we haven't had a lot of turnover over the last decade or so in our software engineering team, so we've been lucky there, but we also follow a very rigid standards practice. So a lot of the different technologies that we leverage are modularized enough that we can leverage them wherever, and they're also very well documented. That's both in the code and outside of the code as far in our software code repository. So those are what we've done so far, and we've had success. We've had a little bit of turnover here and there. For example, on our Excel system, we had to hire new software engineers from scratch about 5 years ago, and we're able to get them up to speed fairly quickly and get them to the point where they could understand all the different touch points and integrations and customization we had done to that system. But we have been successful through, again, lots of documentation, following a rigid set of standards, and really good communication.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, well, Dave, kudos to you and your team for the work that you do. It is amazing. And there are times I just think, man, we need to box this up and get it sent out and have other entities pay us for it. You guys do such good work, so we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman Hoagland.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Strader.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and I echo the other comments about especially how nimble your department was with the COVID-19 situation. We talk a lot about our successes. Are there any ongoing challenges or things that we should have on our radar that came up, during this transition to remote work, or things that would be good for council to be aware of that you guys are grappling with?
Sure, I can definitely speak to that, Councilwoman Strader. The biggest challenge I think that we probably had was adjusting to remote work needs. So as we transitioned people to these remote work situations, many of them hadn't had that opportunity in the past. So it was really helping them wrap their heads around how they can get around not having a printer at home, or not having a scanner at home, how they can take their process digital when they hadn't had a need to do that in the past. So I think we've covered a lot of that with the employees so far. And to date, I don't think we have many concerns left. I will say that there may be requests for some of that technology as we continue to evolve the city's work from home program. But I think at this point in time, we're in a good place. The other area that we run into challenges with was really with the need for video conferencing or calling solutions. We really had one solution at the time, which was GoToMeeting. And while we had a few basically meeting hosts available, we didn't have something that would cover, this large of a shift or need that we had with this situation. So we were able to leverage a lot of the different opportunities out there for vendors that were handing off free licensing for temporary needs due to this challenge. And so I don't think that we had anything out of the ordinary come up there, but long term, I think that we will definitely see that continue to evolve, and there may be some future software or oriented solution expenditures that will come up due to that. So
Thank you. That was very helpful.
And Dave, if I could just also add in, you may be seeing a policy next Tuesday in front of you regarding a telework work from home policy. We didn't have something in place specifically, but this is a direction that Dave and I have been talking about going since January. It just got here quicker than we were ready for it. So we do need to get something down officially on telework. But it also has to take in consideration, this is not a normal telework practice that we've been under. So they'll be separated slightly, but it's still important to get something down. So you can see that as early as next week. Council, any further questions? All right. Thank you very much. They appreciate it.
thank you.
And now we'll go right into our next phase of COVID, piggybacking off of that with item 5B, which will be a human resources COVID-19 employee policy discussion. I'll turn this over to Crystal.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I appreciate your time this afternoon. So on March 18th, 2020, President Trump did sign a law, the Family First Corona Response Act. And this act does require that the city provide 2 temporary benefits from the time period of April 2020 to December 31st, 2020 to our employees. You have a copy of those 2 policies in your packet. They are the emergency paid sick leave and family medical leave expansion. The emergency paid sick leave allows employees, regardless of how long they've worked for the city, to be eligible for additional paid sick leave, with the exception that as an employer of emergency responders, we may elect to exclude such employees. The FMLA expansion allows employees to take a paid FMLA leave if he or she cannot work remotely because of a minor child's school or childcare service has closed due to COVID-19. These temporary policies will be placed on the Human Resources intranet page for employee reference, as well as the support forms and request forms, et cetera, for processing. You have a resolution that has also been attached. And so on behalf of the HR department, I respectfully request your adoption of these federally mandated policies.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Neri.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would add one more comment. As Crystal mentioned, because of the unique character of both public safety and public works personnel, and the unique character of both their scheduling, backfilling, overtime, and those types of things, that they will have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis rather than a blanket policy. And that's now been inserted into the policy that is now on the website. So the original one that we sent to you on Friday has this new language inserted into it to separate that out, just to make it clear, because the original policy as proposed didn't call that out specifically. And so I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Thank you, Mr. Neri.
Council, any questions regarding this information? Okay. If not, we'll move on to item 5C, a resolution 20-2205 regarding the city council for the city of Meridian adopting expansion of FMLA employee policy. Do I have any conversation or motion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Wharton.
if there's no discussion, I move that we approve resolution 20-2205.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 20-2205. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton,
Aye.
Cavanagh,
Aye.
Moreau,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Hoagland,
Aye.
Arndt,
Aye.
All ayes. Motion passes. Item 5D is resolution 20-2206 regarding the city of Meridian adopting expansion of sick leave policy for COVID-19 related leave. Is there any discussion on this item or do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Wharton.
there's no discussion. I move we approve resolution 20-2206.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 20-2206. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton,
Aye.
Cavanagh,
Aye.
Moreau,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Hoagland,
Aye.
Arndt,
Aye.
All ayes. Resolution is agreed to. Thank you. Item 5E is from our Community Development Department. I will turn this over to Mr. Hood.
Yes,
All right.
thank you. Mayor, members of council, the requested budget amendment before you this afternoon is the next step in comprehensive plan implementation. So as you know, we adopted a new comprehensive plan December of last year, and there were 7 high priority implementation projects that we had discussed and got direction to move forward with in various forms and fashions. A couple of those you'll actually see later this year, an enhancement request for fiscal year 21. We saw an opportunity to build on what Logan Simpson, who was our main consulting partner on the comprehensive plan, to piggyback on work they did and helping us develop the comprehensive plan, to dig a little deeper into the fields area. I've been using that term for several years now. It's the northwest 4 square miles of our area of city impact. So south of Chinden, north of McMillan to the county line, and State Highway 16 would be the eastern boundary of that. So the community saw some real opportunity in this area. It's going to be kind of out on an island. Again, it's going to be bisected from the rest of our community by a future state highway and an existing state highway. This may not be the best analogy, but it's sort of a more of a Hyde Park on steroids, if you will, with a mixed use center kind of grounding it right in the middle of those 4 square miles, where you could have neighborhood shops and services, some higher density kind of around it, and then feathering to some more traditional residential and commercial uses. What this project actually does is, again, puts a finer point on those. And not only, the consultant wouldn't only just tell us what we need to get out of developers or property owners as they develop, annex, and develop in the city, but what should we as the city be doing to prepare for that? How should we till the ground, partner potentially with developers to get this area to be something special? We would probably, I'll be honest, we'd probably be okay if we didn't do this and get more of the same. You know, we'd get some residential subdivisions around a high school and it would just be more of Meridian, and that's fine. You know, most of Meridian's pretty nice. This, again, we heard from the community, there's a real opportunity out here. There's a lot of vacant ground with real potential into the future. And so we want to do it right, kind of similar to the 10-mile specific area plan in 2007 that we adopted. It's real similar to that, with real specific standards on expectations from, again, both the development community as well as the city on how we can bring something to life out in this area. So you have some more information in the attached in your packet. It is a $49,900, not to exceed, budget amendment, largely to help us facilitate those discussions and then draft up white papers and a plan for implementation. So with that, I will stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Caleb. And I just want to make sure I didn't miss this. This was something that was originally contemplated when we did the comprehensive plan that was pulled out from the original budget due to the cost initially, if I recall, at least maybe not the specific area, but the idea of doing these specific area type plans. Is that correct? Am I remembering that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, actually, back when we were negotiating the original comp plan contract, there were 3 or 4 different kind of add-on tasks that Logan Simpson had identified as potential. So this is one that we didn't originally fund. Doesn't mean we're committed to having to do it now, but we do see, again, some benefit in this. So yeah, this was something that was talked about. Actually, I'll take it a step further. There was a push, and I'm not going to say it was a huge push, but there were some on the steering committee from the comprehensive plan that wanted to delay the adoption of our comprehensive plan to do this work. They were concerned there was such an opportunity out here. They were concerned about adopting the plan without having this level of detail in the plan. And we told them, let us get the plan adopted. There's 500 policies we really want to adopt, and we think there's some good things, but we'll come back and do this work and really put, again, a finer point on some of the things and what we envision in this area. So again, no promises there, but that's kind of how this has played out over the last several months.
Thank you, Caleb. Council, the only thing I'm going to add as a member of the steering committee that was going through this is to what Caleb pointed out. This is an area that's bordered by the county, or by a different county on 2 sides, and by state highways on 2 sides. It is going to need to, it's not going to develop the same way. We don't have control over how it adjusts into those other areas. So Caleb is correct. We spend a lot of time as a steering committee on this specific area, but leave it for your consideration from here. I saw Councilwoman Strader was unmuting her mic. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess a question, kind of a comment. I mean, I understand it's such a unique area of the city, and it makes sense to me that we want to look at it very carefully. And it sounds like we use the same process with the 10-mile area. So I get that. I would be curious, just sort of thinking big picture for the department. Each area of Meridian seems to be asking for these types of specific area plans and sort of tailored plans. And I'm just wondering, do you envision a way to, is it ever possible in the future to move away from consulting work on these types of plans and bring, either augmented talent or just something different in-house? Or do you think it's important to have a consultant, for this type of process?
So Mr. Mayor, Councilman Strader, so certainly into the future, I mean, as our city continues to grow and evolve, I could see adding staff to do this type of work. To your point, we do have other parts of town that want similar work, although a lot of that is in existing, within existing city limits or surrounded by city limits. This is really in the county. I guess we right now, we don't have the subject matter experts on staff to do this type of a work. Again, we're looking for them. They do work all across the country, internationally. And again, what are those communities that bring those visions to reality doing as a government agency, even to facilitate the development with the private sector? So that's really what we don't have that experience on. And really what this is kind of the heart of what this is getting at. They're going to interview developers, local developers, and other stakeholders, so property owners, and kind of understand where that market is and what we can do. And then again, what we can do, kind of getting off track from your question there. I'll give another example though, because down in the Southern Rim area, we feel we do have the staff to do some of that type of design work. So in-house, we don't need to consult that out. Brian McClure in my office has a lot of that background as a landscape architect and some of those things that we can really work with that neighborhood or that community to develop some of their specific area plan requests. So a little bit of both. It's kind of project specific. Again, for this project, we don't have the in-house staff to perform the duties necessary, but for some of the other requests, we do.
Mr. Mayor, just
Councilman Schroeder.
thanks. That's helpful. I think for context, I think we do a really great job as a city of innovating and insourcing when we can. And I just would urge us to try to, evaluate when it makes sense and how to kind of get to where we could use that same type of a process in the different parts of the city that we need to. Sounds like you're looking at it on a case-by-case basis, but the consulting bills do add up. So it's important to use them judiciously.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pro.
I'd also like to share that the original bid was about 20,000 higher than this. And in our conversations about it, the mayor and I had talked with planning department and had asked that they remove their bids for travel expenses, since we and everybody else has been learning how to do this remotely. And so I'm proud to say that this is 20,000 less than what the original bid was, because we were able to go back to them and make some adjustments to it. Is there anything that Caleb could add on that, or did I get that right? Did I understand that correctly?
That's absolutely correct. I guess the only thing that concerned me a little bit at first when we talked to them about that was what's the implications then for the local boots on the ground for staff. And in those conversations, they made us real comfortable that they could do most all of the work, even remotely, and really we wouldn't be shouldering a lot of that burden to make those meetings go. They'll just do it remotely. So yeah, it's $20,000 less than, so we're saving them taking 3 or 4 trips out. I can't remember now. Face to face. I think we'll lose a little bit in value of that, but I think we can, I think the mayor said, we're getting comfortable with these Zoom meetings now and things. So I think most of our community will really still engage, even if we do it with our consulting being video conferenced in.
Council, any further questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
one of the elephants in the room in this area, which I'm sure they're going to address, I just didn't see it in the task gate, is the compatibility with Highway 16. And if it'll be utilizing an assumption that that current location is for sure the location and elevated or not elevated. That'll be one of the principles that they will probably address more specifically.
I will say yes. I know that they've been buying up right of way out in that area, so a lot of those questions are being addressed more fully than they've been able to do up to this point in time. Caleb, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but
yeah, we just actually this last work, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Borton, just this last week got the GIS line work from ITD and their consultant on the design for these first couple of miles that are impacted here. And so, yeah, to the mayor's point, right of way design is almost done here. So that certainly can be part of what we give to the consultants to be accounted for as we get again into some of these specifics. And the property owners in there are at the table. I'll just let you know, we've probably over half of the lands kind of along that corridor we've talked to, 2/3 of them. And so, yeah, we more of that's being known all the time.
Mr. Mayor.
that's one, Martin.
Last question to that point. I don't know if there's any potential development applications contemplated in that area, but is there direction similar to how we did it back in the 10 mile of providing notice that this area is under study and it's best to hold for now and let this project get completed?
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Borton, we haven't anticipated that, but that is one of the reasons, again, that we're looking at a budget amendment and not an enhancement. Time is of the essence to some degree here, so we do want to get moving on this because, again, we have, parcels all the way from Ustick up to Chinden that we've talked to about development out here. So we haven't taken it to that extent. But once we really kick this off, I think we can relay that to property owners and developers that, hey, we've got a 6-month project here and we'd like to work with you on your plans to make sure that it's integrated into that. I don't know that it warrants saying, pause on everything. I think we can still move simultaneously. But there are some applications that are moving forward, some site plans anyways that are moving forward in this area. So if we're gonna jump, now's the time.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
Caleb, has there been any conversation at the staff level about how our current economic climate is going to have impact on development in Meridian? I go back to 2008, and if we anticipate that things are going to go back to like that, even if we plateau, I guess I've got some concerns now, maybe more about the timing, and I'm just curious if that's something that you have discussed as staff. Taking away, I've got some real challenges with the scope of work as well, but the timing to me seems to be also an issue. I guess I'm looking at it from the other side.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Cavanagh, yeah, we haven't talked about it as it relates to fields, but I am in regular communications with Bill Parsons, who sees the development applications that he's the kind of the front line of defense, if you will, we have not slowed down. We are, and I don't know, right? A trend, what is a trend? So I don't have that crystal ball. But there's a lot in our industry that is seeing this more as a blip and not a recession. Again, I don't know that, but there are some folks, and I think Cameron's on the call. We are having those conversations, obviously, because we want to know that too. I hear what you're saying. I want to be sensitive to $50,000 isn't just something we take lightly and throw around. I'll be honest though, I think I would bet that we're going to see at least 3 or 4 projects right there along McDermott / State Highway 16 in the next this calendar year, irregardless of if we do this. But again, there's an opportunity to partner with them to make sure that it's the right project for our community and fits in with the larger vision for this area. Again, I don't know that, but I'm all signs I'm seeing are here locally. There's not a whole lot of at least new development, and we're still moving forward. So,
And Caleb, if I could just add, if it does slow down, what better way than to have the project on the shelf ready to go, as compared to waiting to a later date and time to then try to brush it off.
Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
But Mr. Mayor, didn't we even make revisions to the 10-mile plan coming off of the Great Recession because so much had changed? And so I guess sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'll end it with that.
Yeah, I think every plan is subject to change no matter how well you do it. And I think this is the exact conversation council had last week. As you look at it, just because you have a plan, you got to be willing to follow. Otherwise, the plan's no good anyways.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
And to that point, when you look at that new highway project and the cost still yet to be out, even though they've started acquisition of property and whatnot, that's $450 million. And the state does not have a funding mechanism for that. We can't even keep up with our current highways. So I really think we need to plan, we need to move forward with this, but we definitely have to have some flexibility, because that could be a long time coming for that highway.
Council, do I have any further questions or comments?
Take one more bite at it.
Councilwoman Schrader.
I think my feedback is because of the timing and that you're seeing applications likely to come in the near term, and given the importance, it sounds like, in criticality of this location, I'm supportive of this one. But I would really love for the planning department to just quickly follow, as you do through the process, but to figure out when it comes to the next specific area plans, can we try to do it all in-house? Is there more support, that we can provide you, and what's the cost benefit of that? Just, I get that it's helpful to have a consultant for some of these, but I think we should really take a hard look at trying to in-source that too.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pearl.
if there isn't any further discussion, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we approve the budget amendment in the not to exceed amount of $49,900 for the Fields Area Professional Services Consulting work.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment for $49,900. Is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I don't think it'll surprise anybody. I'm not going to support the motion, but I want to share a few reasons why. Off the bat, I think we just got some communication from Mr. Lavoie. Shows that the city spent, I think we spent $140,000 already on a field study plan. I know that this will be somewhat different, but I worry again about spending dollars on a plan that may not be enacted because of what I believe is a pending financial crisis. Two, I'm really just concerned overall about the timing. There are some elements within that scope of work that I'm concerned about. Again, how we're going to engage people virtually. I don't know if is the right thing. Lastly, though, because of the concern about a financial impact, that now's the time for government to not be as heavy-handed, to allow the free market to really thrive in that area. And if development slows down, the last thing we want is for something to not be able to occur simply because it doesn't conform to a plan that was created before we knew the real-world impacts of this, what I again believe is going to be a financial crisis. So for me, it's maybe not a no, but it's just not a no right now. If the council wants to move forward, I'm on board, but I just think that this is something that's worth pressing pause on.
Council, any further comments? If not, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton,
Aye.
Kavanagh,
No.
Perot,
Aye.
Strader,
Aye.
Hoagland,
Aye.
Burnt,
Aye.
The ayes have it. The budget amendment is agreed to. Thank you very much. So
Good job, Caleb.
we're going to leave it with you, I assume, for this next item. Council, I know we have an executive session. We've got a 6 o'clock. I want to make sure people have time for a break before we get into our next meeting. So can we give Caleb 15 minutes till about 5:40? Does that work, or do people want to stop earlier than that? All right, Caleb, you got 15 minutes to lead us through this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So yeah, this is continued from last week, although the things we're going to talk about today are new topics, but it's all under the heading of planning process improvements. I think I'm just going to dive right in since we've got a couple of big items and some smaller ones to cover. The first one has to do with scheduling hearings. So I'm still going to be working from the same Excel spreadsheet that was sent in your packet and the Word document. And for this one, I'm primarily going to rely on the Excel spreadsheet because this does not relate to city code. This is more just a potential process change. So I'm looking at line 7 on it's item 4, but line 7 on that Excel spreadsheet. And it really, again, has to do with the amount of time it takes to schedule a project for hearing, generate a staff report, and then obtain and consider agency comments. So as you are aware, typically by the time a project gets to the city council, we have ACHD and school district comments, but not all the time. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, even less. Sometimes it gets to a hearing at Planning and Zoning and they don't have a staff report yet from the Ada County Highway District. And we get a lot of neighbors that are there that want to talk about traffic, yet we don't have those comments from our transportation partner. So one of the things we had talked about was waiting to schedule a project for public hearing until we have in hand that action letter from ACHD and or the school district, and that's where some of the discussion is. I will also just say one of the things we've talked about with my council liaison and the mayor as we've kind of gotten it to this point is we do have an open position that we hope to fill here in the next couple of months, a coordination planner. So we would give ACHD, let's just say 30 days or 45 days. And if we don't hear anything from them, we could use our planner to basically be an in-between ACHD and our staff, and basically do some analysis, try to get that information out, but a proxy basically for ACHD and their staff report. So we wouldn't hold a project up indefinitely. There would be a backstop or a time at which we say, okay, we've given you enough time. We aren't going to hold this project up forever. But again, traffic is a big thing and schools is a big thing. And so the big point here is we want to have elected and appointed officials have all the information, all the data available to them to make an informed decision. So again, the question kind of at hand is, do we wait to schedule public hearings until we get those comments, or we're typically at about 8 weeks anyway. So when an application is deemed complete, we're scheduling projects out for roughly 8 weeks to a planning and zoning commission. This could elongate that another couple, 3 weeks even. So that's kind of the first issue feedback that I'd like some direction on, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Pro.
I am in favor of waiting until we get a report or a document from ACHD. However, I would like to comment that I have already heard feedback from the development community that they're not excited about. This probably might be the element of all of these process changes that they're the least excited about, because they don't want to create additional time delays beyond what, the process already takes quite a few months. And they feel like, since our code says that that the reports need to be in before council, and council's generally the one that's making the final decision on most of the applications, that should be sufficient for us. So I am not advocating their thoughts. I'm just sharing with you what I have heard and what kind of the other side of it is, and certainly with the mayor's permission would welcome Caleb to share his thoughts on that comment as well.
Mr. Hood or any of the council members have any comments they'd like to weigh in on?
I'd rather not touch that one. That one, I think Jessica's accurate. This is not going to be popular with the development community. Absolutely. This is more, again, at the request kind of neighborhoods, of the public, and to a lesser extent, but even our planning and zoning commission, because they're the ones that have to deal with not having an ACHD staff report a lot of times, that you have a room with neighbors that want to talk about traffic.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Burr.
My only concern about this is we're making a policy change to a process for, reports that ACHD or West Data School District aren't required to give us. So if now with that said, they've done a great job in the past, or with needed improvement. However, are we willing to make a process change based upon other organizations' willingness to abide by our new policy when they don't really have to? And so that's something to think about as well.
Mr. Mayor.
I will weigh in just from a general standpoint. I'm not gonna, but from a practical standpoint, one of the things we've talked about doing is on the back end, shortening the time frame in which we push them through our process. So it's not a complete slowdown, it's just a modification. But I think the end result for council would need to be, under any scenario, are you okay with pushing or doing a project without that information from the school district or ACHD? Would you hold it up at your level if you never received that information one way or the other? And to me, I think that's as much the policy question for you all, regardless of the time frame, because we can say we'll hold it for a month and wait for them. If they don't do it, we add in staff report, and then we push it through P&Z and City Council in a shorter time frame than we currently do. And there's not necessarily an elongated time frame. But then you're still doing it without the information from those two organizations. And is that okay or not? Councilman Pro, I know you were wanting to speak, so I'm gonna go to Councilwoman Pro first.
Thank you. I agree. It has been difficult for us to get consistent information. In the time that I was on P&Z from then until now, they've made significant improvements in getting that information to us. And while I realize President Burns' statement, ACHD is going to issue something. It's my understanding from the planning department that we will get something from them. It's not always necessarily that they're going to have a hearing and issue a full report, but at some point we're getting something from ACHD in writing. And so I'm not as much concerned about them. So I think to say that there's, just because they don't have to send it to us, that we shouldn't make a policy based on, you know, on that, we are going to get something from ACHD every time. I just don't know how we can sort of guarantee the timing on that. West Ada, well, we all know the challenges that we've had with the history of that, but they have been very consistent recently, and I really hope they continue to do so.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Thank you. I do, for your first question, I do think it's important to have information from ACHD and from West Ada to make land use decisions. There are subject matter experts. Those are the two biggest issues that I think we face on these. And so I think we need to have that. I'd be curious if, you know, does this require a policy change in code, or do we have the ability to pilot the new process and see if we can kind of shorten it on the back end and if we can come up with a process that's workable?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I can answer that. So again, this is not a code. We have some sections of code that talk about the number of days between planning and zoning to city council. That is in our code. We need to be timely in this, but kind of to your point, we could pilot this. Bill Parsons does track the amount of time from when an application is submitted, deemed complete, when we get an ACHD report, when a staff report's written, when the planning is. So we have that information and we can report back and look at averages. How much does it, if any, extend the timeline of projects? So again, this wouldn't necessarily require a code change. It would just be direction to staff. Don't schedule a project for planning and zoning until you have in hand, you know, a staff report from one, if not both of those agencies.
Mr. Mayor, question for Caleb.
Councilman Hoagland.
Caleb, how long was that time frame again from when we know the project is coming that they have to get it to? I heard 8 weeks, but I don't think that was the accurate time frame.
Our average right now, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Hoagland. So our general average, we used to be more in the 6 to 7 weeks. We're pushing more 8 and 9 weeks now, even without this policy. So quite honestly, that typically gives ACHD enough time to get us things anyway. So there really may not be, but I hope this isn't the new norm. We had to kind of delay some scheduling of projects because of COVID and all that. So we're a little bit backed up right now in our queue. Typically, again, it's at least 30 days. We're usually kind of in the 6-week time frame. We're pushing more 8 weeks now, 8-9 weeks to get a project on for hearing. So essentially, we're kind of testing it almost now because it is a little bit of an elongated time frame now, which gives our partner agencies a little bit more time to get us comments.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
To follow up on that, you know, whether it's 30 days, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I mean, yes, I want that information from our highway district and from the school district to make an informed decision. It does help. However, we are going to have to make a decision, and they are responsible for that information. And to me, no answer is an answer. And we move forward on the project based on the information we have at hand. They have elected officials who are responsible to their constituents. And for whatever reason, if that information is not getting to us, I certainly want to find out why. And if there's ways to improve the process, I'm interested in doing that. But we can't extend a time frame out so far that it's really on us to make the determination right away, or as timely as possible. So I don't want to extend that definitely beyond 8 weeks. If they can't get us that information in that time frame, I'm sorry. No answer is an answer to me.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
I tend to agree with you. What I'm kind of hoping is, is there a way to pilot the new process and the new timeline? And I agree with you, though, if we've requested it, if we've given them adequate time to provide the information, maybe there's a drop dead date where if we haven't received it, we'll unfortunately have to move on without it. But I like the idea of trying the new process because it sounds to me like it might be more efficient, and it might, I think, give us all the information at the same time. And it sounds like on the back end, it might be more efficient for staff as well. Caleb, do you want to maybe, are you leaning toward the process change? Does it help your department in terms of processing applications?
So I will just advocate, it certainly does, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Strader, it certainly does help staff to make an informed recommendation as well. So it certainly is helpful for staff. If you want a solid staff report, we should be having that information. That's the other side of this is, yeah, it's great for the decision makers to have that information, but it's tough for us to give you an educated recommendation if we don't have that information. So that's part of this story as well. Again, I'm not necessarily advocating for it. We communicate and do coordinate with ACHD. Honestly, and Councilwoman Perot asked for this, and I don't have a hard number, but you can count them basically on one hand this last year, the amount of times where the Planning and Zoning Commission didn't have a staff report from ACHD in time. So we do. Bill Parsons does a good job of talking with ACHD. Hey, we've got this staff report. When do you think you can have a staff report written? Okay, here's where I'm going to schedule it for hearing then. And that gives us a week or two kind of leeway in there for them to do their thing. And so we do have that information. So to answer your question, yeah, I do think it'll help us, but is that benefit worth the cost to the overall process? Most of the time I'd say no. We kind of know what the staff reports are going to say anyways. So I don't think we do this just because it helps staff and our process. We kind of already, again, I'm pretty proud of how Bill does it and talking with ACHD to make sure most of the time that we can get ACHD to promise us a staff report in time prior to hearing. Just doesn't always work out that way.
So council, we are right at the 5:40 mark. I know we've got at least one person who hasn't spoken yet. Councilman Borton, was that you that was asking to be recognized?
No, this is Bill Parsons.
Oh, Bill can go.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on the comments that Caleb was making and just share with you the process improvements that we've done over the last several years to get stakeholders, our partnering agencies involved in the process. So the school district's invited to all of our pre-application meetings. They're invited to all of our project review meetings. They're on our transmittals list. So they're privy to the information way before the time that we even transmit the application to them from the clerk's office. Certainly going back to Hoagland's comments, sometimes we can't force them to provide comments if they don't want to, but they have that information at their fingertips early on in the process. That's been a goal of ours 2 or 3 years ago, and we continually to try to make strides to improve on that. So I think that is noteworthy. And as Caleb mentioned, if there is a controversial project, or I know it's going to take an extended lead time for ACHD, I do reach out to them and ask for their expectation as to when we can expect a staff report from them. And that's built into our review time for the planning team. What I can't control is if a neighbor or if some person complains about the project and all of a sudden we thought it was going to be ACHD's staff level approval on the staff report, and someone complains and all of a sudden we're scheduled 2 to 3 months out for a public hearing because they want to be in front of the commission and have their say in front of that body. We can't control that. That's ACHD's process. So I just at least want to share that information with you. Yes, is it good to have all of that information up front? It is, as Caleb mentioned, most of the time with Sonia's level of experience, my level of experience, even Caleb's level of experience, we do anticipate what ACHD is going to say in their recommendations for the staff report. And if we don't have that information, certainly the assigned planner reaches out to those agencies and asks for at least an email or some kind of response so that you have something on record saying, yes, we generally support it or we don't. So we try to get that information ahead of time so that you can make that informed decision. So again, I can't control when a neighbor complains about a project and it goes before ACHD's commission, but we have revamped our staff report. We let you know that if one's been received or not, and that's included for both Planning and Zoning Commission and you for review. So I think as staff, we've done everything that we could do possibly in order to get that information in front of you. So again, I'll just conclude my remarks and let you guys deliberate on that request. Thank you for your time.
Councilman Borton, did you have some comments you were wanting to make?
No, that's right.
Okay. Well, council, what I'm going to suggest is that we stop there. You mull on this a little bit more, and we can come back next week with any further final comments on this topic from that standpoint. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pro.
I just wanted to ask Caleb very quickly. Caleb, do you feel like you received clear direction from us on the first 3 items last week, or is there anything else that you just were unclear about and you wanted us to circle around again so that we make sure we do that the next time we discuss?
Councilman Pro, yeah, I think we're in pretty good shape. I will just double check my notes, and next week, since we have to continue this one more time, I will just double back. But I think last week was very productive. Even this week was, even though it didn't really get any direction on that one. We have one more thing and then a couple of small ones. So I think next week, another 15 minutes, we should be able to knock this out. So thank you.
All right. With that, council, do I have any motions? Or yes.
Mr. Mayor, are we going into executive session, or are we going to adjourn the meeting and do this executive session after the regular meeting? Do we have time? What are your thoughts?
Can you weigh in if we will have our executive session people available afterwards, or if we should do that during? I don't see Mr.
Mr. Mayor, this is Chris. I predict he may be on the executive session call.
Yeah, let's go into executive session and then from that standpoint. So yeah.
Okay.
So item 6.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session per Idaho Code 74-206 F and D.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Second.
I have a motion second. Is there a discussion on the motion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton,
Aye.
Cavanagh,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Strader,
Aye.
Hoagland,
Aye.
Burnt,
Aye.
All ayes. Thank you.
Jessica, you're still showing on this Zoom meeting. You'll want to leave this and just rejoin it when you're done.
I did leave it and I came back into a new meeting. Do I need to, are you gonna give me a new web ID?
Bill Mary sent that out. It's either in Skype or GoToMeeting. It's not in Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Penelope, if you can hear me, there's nothing wrong on your end. You just are in as an attendee. When your item comes up, we would change your status, allowing you to speak. You are unmuted now if you can confirm you hear this. If Jared or Dave Teedy are on the line, if you can call me, having a technical issue.
See you right there. I'm working on it, Chris.
All right, looks like we have people. Council, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burt,
I move that we come out of executive session per Idaho code. I guess we don't need the code.
do I have a second?
Mr. Mayor, second.
I have a motion with a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And we are adjourned. With that, I will call the next meeting into order. For the record, it's Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. The time is 6:02 p.m. We'll begin this meeting with roll call attendance.
Mr. Mayor, before roll call, we have one technical issue we're trying to work out. I'm curious if you could pause for one moment.
Then I guess we will pause for one moment.
We will be right back with you.
Congratulations on your first show. We're bringing the top talent, the top fighters in the world. A lot of the credit for that goes to the gentleman who joined me now, Dana White.
Mr. Mayor, we are still working on something in the background for one of our planning staff, but we should be good to proceed while they work on that.
Okay. Well, with that, I will ask the clerk, I'll bring this back in Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. The time is 6:04 p.m. Ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Borton,
He's an attendee. He's not a panelist, like, so he can't talk, I don't think.
let me help fix that. One moment. Okay, Councilman Borton,
Here.
Councilman Cavanagh,
Here.
Councilwoman Perot, here, Councilwoman Strader,
Here.
Councilman Hoagland,
Here.
Councilman Burnt,
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Item number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance.
Where's the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
One nation, under God,
under God, indivisible,
visible, with
with
liberty and
liberty
justice
and justice for all.
for all.
Item 3, I just want to confirm, Chris, do we not have Pastor Brian with us?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. I did not get confirmation. I do not see him on the call.
Okay, then we will go on to item 4, adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Byrne.
item D has requested to continue to April 28th. When we get to there, we'll talk more about it. But other than that, I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor, before I second, do we want to add the executive session on at the end of the meeting? And Bill, what letter was that particular section that we need to add?
D.
742061D.
D.
All right. Does the maker of the motion agreed to amend his motion to include that item? And I have a second.
I second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The agenda is adopted. We will move into item 5A, a public hearing on the proposed 2020 summer fee schedule for parks. And I will turn this over to Garrett White.
All right, Mr. Mayor and members of council, thanks for having me again tonight. Before you are the remaining 4 summer 2020 program fees. Like I mentioned last week, these fees are listed per the contractor or per the instructor per our contract. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Council, any questions for Garrett?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Garrett, I apologize. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I meant to call you about this today. That Exhibit A that's in our documents, there's nothing there. And so I don't know if that was just if there was a piece in the exhibit that we were supposed to review before approval, or if it just was inadvertently added.
Let me look.
I've never seen anything like that, and so it struck me as that was probably just inadvertently added. But I wanted to make sure before.
It looks like, Councilman Cavanagh, that looks like it was just inadvertently added.
Okay.
It's really just those 4, which is all in the one contract in the first.
Yep.
Yeah. Good question.
Thanks, Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council, do I have any further questions for Garrett?
Thanks, Garrett.
If not, we'll move on to item 5B, resolution number 20-2198.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
should I go ahead and close the public hearing on item 5A?
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing on item 5A, the proposed 2020 summer fee schedule updates for the Parks and Recreation Department.
Second.
I have a motion second to close the public hearing on the proposed 2020 summer fee schedule updates. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 5B,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move approval of resolution number 20-2198, adopting the summer 2020 fee schedule for Meridian Parks and Recreation Department.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 20-2198. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton,
Aye.
Cavanagh,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Hoagland,
Aye.
Burnt,
Aye.
All ayes, the resolution is agreed to. Item 5C, request for reconsideration for Fraser Council Review, H 2020-0011. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You have before you a request for reconsideration under our city code. Mr. Jones is counsel for the requester in this case is Ms. Songe. I think there's a Jenny Hay on the line. I think she's assisting Ms. Songe this evening. As I've mentioned to you prior, and I've also mentioned to Mr. Jones, there's no testimony at this stage. Your decision point is based on the written materials that you have in your packet from Mr. Jones. And your decision point is either to affirm the decision you made on March 24th, which was to revoke the accessory use permit. Just to make it clear for the record, the basis of that revocation on the 24th was the belief based on the information that was provided by the appellant that night, Mr. Fraser, that the process was not properly followed by Ms. Songe. That has now been refuted by her counsel and Ms. Songe's assistance. And so you can either affirm your decision, reverse your decision, modify your decision, or set it for a new hearing, which we will then notice all parties, and then have another public hearing where all parties can present their evidence in relation to the request that was made. So one of four choices is your decision, counsel.
Thank you, Bill. Council, any questions for Mr. Neri at this point in time?
Mr. Neri?
Councilman Hoagland.
Mr. Neri? My question is, it has to go through the whole process, the time frame of noticing and everything else. There's no way to expedite if we want to have a new public hearing, correct?
That is correct. I mean, we'll take at least 10 days, so it would be probably 2 weeks. So that would be May 5th would be the earliest we can hold a hearing. And I see Mr. Jones is on the line. And as I said, there's no testimony. If the council needs any clarification, again, it's just clarifying question, not testimonial. Certainly Mr. Jones can answer that if you have any, but if it's a hearing, you'd prefer an opportunity for both parties to present whatever evidence they have besides what you already have in written form, that would be your way to do that.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Pro.
There are some what I feel are sort of gaps in information, some questions that I have about what transpired that I would like to have answered from the applicant. So I am in favor of having a new public hearing or a second public hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
just to provide maybe an opposing view, I am not in favor of having an additional hearing on this. It sounded to me like the city and the clerk followed our agreed upon process to provide Ms. Sangay with adequate notice to appear before us, and she did not. And I don't like the idea of creating a precedent that we're going to have people not show up for meetings as requested and then review them.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, well, Councilwoman Strader touches on important factors there. I'm curious, a question to Mr. Neri. The request for reconsideration does lay out some things about whether or not Mr. Fraser's appeal was tardy, and it's based on if they're considered to be a party of record. Is that something we can weigh in now, or is that something that has to be established at another hearing?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Hoagland. Again, that would probably have to be done in a hearing because we can't provide testimony tonight. I think the dispute before you from the written materials from Mr. Jones, the council's decision was based upon the process not being followed based upon the appellant, Mr. Fraser's statements in the hearing. Ms. Sangay's presence wasn't required, so her lack of being there itself isn't an issue. The dispute now is she followed the process, and his written materials state that she did. So there's a dispute of fact between the code, her performance in following the process, and Mr. Fraser's in the appeal. And so there are some issues that unfortunately we can't resolve tonight. We would have to have a hearing to do that.
Well, Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm of the mind, like Councilman Perot, I think in a matter of fairness, to make some factual determinations of some of the things that were set out, I think it would be a matter of rehearing this issue to make a better determination, if you will. I don't want to set a precedent here. I think Councilman Strader is correct in that, but at the same time, I'm uncomfortable making a final decision at this point in time with these facts that are before us tonight that we would have to weigh more thoroughly. So with
Mr.
that,
Neri?
I would move that we have a new public hearing scheduled, I'll say May 5th, to have a reconsideration of the Sangay daycare facility.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Neri?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Neri. Just for clarification, is there any concern on your part that the city didn't follow our process correctly?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Cavanagh. No, I don't think the city had any error in our process. I think the question of fact is simply, was the process followed initially by Ms. Sangay?
Thank you.
Do you have any further discussion on the motion?
Is May 5th, Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Burnt.
Is May 5th an appropriate date for parties involved and for, I don't have an agenda in front of me. I have to go look through my emails to find it. I just want to make sure that May 5th is an adequate and appropriate date.
And Mr. Mayor and Councilman Adrian, if it requires a public hearing, and Mr. Neri, if you could comment on this, if it requires renoticing in the newspaper, the earliest date available would be May 19th.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Maybe, I know we hate substitute motions, but before I would maybe make one, a question for Mr. Neri is if we could continue this out further or continue it to next week to set a date. I think Councilmember Burnt asked an appropriate question. The whole reason why we're back here tonight is because one of the parties didn't realize they had to be here. I don't know if I'd be comfortable with us setting a date without us at least verifying from the parties that would be involved that they would be able to be in attendance. I just don't know from a process standpoint how we could explore that. I don't know if Mr. Frazier is on the call. Obviously, Mr. Jones is. I would want to seek some insight from both of those parties before we set a date.
So, Madam Mayor, I can answer Adrian's question. I was looking up the code real quick. It does say all noticing, so she's correct. We would have to go to the newspaper as well as a sign. So we are going to require some legwork on our part to get a sign posted, as well as a newspaper noticing. So you probably are going to be at least to May 19th.
I see Mr. Frazier is nearby. I don't want to necessarily open this up for conversation that we shouldn't under your direction, Mr. Neri, but I don't know if we put out the May 19th information, if we could somehow get confirmation through the chat function from Mr. Frazier and Mr. Jones, and if so, get that information now so council could make a determination on the motion or substitute that's coming.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Barrett?
one way that we could resolve that is to set the date for May 19th and then have the attendees, or just say we're thinking about the 19th and then have the attendees raise their hand if they're in agreement. There's the raise their hand option at the bottom of the participant box where you can raise your hand in agreement.
Additionally, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a concern if all we're asking them is would that be an available date for them, and we're not asking for any other testimonial type of information from them.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pearl.
is this, Mr. Neri, is this going to require the applicant to fund the additional cost of the newspaper publication and mailers?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Pearl, no, the city's going to have to pay for that.
Okay.
These officers just arrived, so.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman
with consent of the second, I would withdraw my original motion and move that we approve a request for reconsideration for Fraser Council Review H 2020-0011 and set that for May 19th, that hearing for May 19th.
Second.
So I've got a revision with the first and the second. Do we have confirmation from the two attendees by raise of hand or other function that day appears to work, or do we just move forward without it?
Mr. Mayor, I think we just move forward.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor, before discussion, I apologize. This is Chris. We do have a raised hand from Mr. Frazier. And Mr. Jones is on the line as well and does have the ability to speak if he chooses to confirm that works.
Well, you're in charge of I can't ask anyone to do anything. So if you want to get a verbal yes from the two of them, go for it.
It works for me.
That's Mr. Jones.
Yes,
That works for Mr. Frazier as well.
Okay. Then with that, do I have any further discussion on the motion? If not,
Yeah, I just want to say, I think if our process or the time that we require people to respond to something and appear before us is something that we need to look at, I think we should look at that. But to me, it is a separate issue. If we followed our process and someone didn't appear, I don't think we should be considering these. I think I'm a big believer in processes, and that's why I will be a no vote.
okay. Any further conversation on the motion or comments, questions on the motion? If not, we'll just ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton,
Abstain. I wasn't present on the 24th, so I'll abstain from the reconsideration.
thank you. Kavanagh,
No.
Perot,
Yes.
Schrader,
No.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Burnt,
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Item 5D has been requested to continue to April 28th, but we'll start off by opening item 5E public hearing for Lupine Cove H 2019-0133.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
I move that we continue this public hearing for H-2019-0133 to April 28th, 2020. With the reason that the applicant failed to post the signs.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
second.
I have a motion, a second, that we continue this item April 28, 2020. Is there a discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
just to make clarification, are we renoticing then everything appropriately? Sign, public notice, newspaper, etc.?
Can I defer to Mr. Neri on this one?
Mr. Mayor, I believe all the noticing, except for the signage, was done today. So the signage has now been corrected for next week. So that has been done, and Ms. Riley has filed an affidavit to that effect. So we're okay to move it a week.
Okay.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. You guys have it. Item 5E is a public hearing for Hill Century Farm North, H 2019-0134. Open this public hearing with staff comment.
Mr. Mayor, before we start,
Councilman Burnt.
as in other public hearings in the past, I've always made it known that Brighton Corporation is one of my customers. To make it also known, they're exclusive flooring customers. They do business with other folks as well. There's a bid process involved, and since I've been at council, I've won some and I've lost some, and sometimes I've not even been involved with the bid process at all. So I personally feel confident having a clear mind and without any bias in participating in this conversation this evening, but I wanted to throw that out to my fellow council members to get their thoughts as well.
Thank you. Council, any concerns with Councilman Burnt participating in this public hearing? Oh, great. Thank you.
No.
Turn this over to staff. Sonia?
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor and Council. Can you hear me now? Okay. The applications before you tonight are a request for a development agreement modification, a rezone, a preliminary plat, a planned unit development, and a conditional use permit. There were also applications for a private street and alternative compliance that have been approved by the director. This site consists of 43 acres of land. It's zoned R8 and CN, and it's located off of the southeast corner of East Amity Road and South Eagle Road. This project was annexed back in 2015 with the requirement of a development agreement. 2 subsequent amendments have been approved to the development agreement. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is mixed use neighborhood. The applicant is requesting a modification to the existing development agreement for Hills Century Farm Commercial to update the concept development plan and certain provisions of the agreement to allow for the development of a self-service storage facility and retail professional office uses where medium density single-family residential uses are currently approved, consistent with the mixed-use neighborhood future land use designation. A rezone is requested of a total of 39.9 acres of land with the R8 zoning district to the CN district, which is 4.9 acres, to the CC district, which is 4.35 acres, and the R15, which is 30.65 acres, consistent with the mixed-use neighborhood designation. A preliminary plat is proposed consisting of 147 building lots and 18 common lots on 43.02 acres of land in the proposed R8, R15, CN, and CC zoning districts. 4 phases of development are proposed, with the residential portion proposing to develop in 1 phase. The storage facility is proposed to develop first. Access is proposed via 1 public street from both South Eagle Road and East Amity Roads. Gated private streets are proposed for security purposes, with alleys and common driveways for internal access to the attached and detached units within the north phase of development, the cadence portion. 25-foot wide landscape street buffers are required along Eagle and Amity Roads. A minimum of 10% qualified open space is required to be provided within the residential portion of the development. 16.4% is proposed, and that does not include landscape parkways, which also qualify, which exceeds the minimum standards overall. A minimum of 2 qualified site amenities are required. A clubhouse, swimming pool, segments of the multi-use pathway system, and outdoor activity complex with amenities to be determined in the future are proposed, which also exceed the minimum standards. A planned unit development for an age-restricted 55 and older gated community is proposed, with a variety of housing types and setbacks unique to the unit and site design. Deviations from certain development standards are proposed, including the following: setbacks for the R15 district, as shown; alleys designed so that the entire length is visible from a private street rather than a public street; and allowance of a through lot for the existing hill home. Off-street parking is proposed in accord with UDC standards. Due to the width of the private streets, on-street parking is only allowed on one side of the streets. An extra 30 spaces are proposed in the central portion of the development next to the community center, which can accommodate guest parking in addition to on-street parking. Concept elevations for the proposed single-family, single-level attached patio homes and detached alley-accessed homes were submitted as shown. A conditional use permit is requested for a 73,730 square foot, 443 unit self-service storage facility on 3.89 acres of land in the CC zoning district. Access is proposed via a driveway from Amity on the east side of the site, which also provides access to the commercial development to the east. An emergency-only access is proposed via Amity on the west end of the site. Concept building elevations were submitted for the storage facility as shown. Building materials consist of vertical reveal metal panels with stucco finish, fiber cement panels with metal channel reveals, and typical fascia with stone wall accents. Structures have step backs for modulation along Amity Road. As noted in the development agreement modification analysis, the proposed elevations do not demonstrate a cohesive design that is proportionate to and blends with the residential buildings within the development as desired in the mixed-use neighborhood designation. Therefore, staff is not supportive of the proposed concept elevations. Private streets for access to the units within the gated community were tentatively approved by the director, as was alternative compliance to UDC 11 3F 4A 4B to allow 124 units accessed off private gated streets, and to UDC 11 3F 4A6 to allow 2 common driveways off of private streets. The commission did recommend approval of this overall application. Mike Wardle and David Turnbull, Brighton Corporation, testified in favor. No one testified in opposition or commented. Written testimony was received from David Palumbo and Mike Wardle, Brighton Corporation, in response to the staff report. Key issues of discussion, Mr. Palumbo would like to see the improvements, the 4-lane roadway expansion to Amity Road completed prior to any development in this area commencing, and concern pertaining to the adequacy of parking proposed for the development. Key issues of discussion by the commission were as follows: desire for the storage unit structures to have nice design elements, not just metal, due to its location on a prominent corner. Question as to whether or not proposed dwelling units will be owner occupied or rental units. Answer is there is a section of independent living units next to the assisted living and memory care units that will be rental units for folks transitioning from a Cadence style product or somewhere in between. Services will be shared between the assisted living and the independent living. Other item of discussion, they were in favor of this type of use in close proximity to the YMCA and the city park. Supportive of age qualified use in this location due to area schools being over capacity. And lastly, there was a suggestion that the applicant consider an L shape for the storage facility that would allow more commercial retail office uses in front adjacent to Amity Road and possibly extend the storage facility further to the east on the backside. The commission did not make any changes to the staff recommendation. The written testimony that's been received since the commission hearing was from Mike Wardle, Brighton Corporation, in response to the commission recommendation. And I'll go through that on the outstanding issues for council. The applicant did submit revised site and landscape plans and a response to the commission recommendation with the following changes requested to DA provisions and or conditions of approval. The first was deletion of number 1A relating to existing DA provision 5.1G2, which states the buildings in the retail professional office area shown on the concept development plan shall be arranged to create some form of common usable area, such as a plaza or green space as desired in mixed use designated areas as set forth in the comprehensive plan. While staff recognizes there is a city park and YMCA nearby, the intent of this provision is for a common usable area to be provided in the commercial area with the commercial buildings surrounding the area. Therefore, staff does not support this requested change. Second, the applicant requested deletion of conditions 2B, 3C, 10A, and number 12, pertaining to the requirement of a 10-foot wide multi-use pathway and associated easement along Eagle and Amity roads. The Parks Department is okay with deleting these conditions as the pathways are not depicted on the pathways master plan. Third, the addition of language to condition number 13 that would allow an exception for a building permit to be issued for the community center prior to the private streets receiving final approval. This is a UDC requirement, 11.3F3B5, that would require approval of alternative compliance to change or council approval as part of the PUD exceptions to code requirements might be considered as well. Modification to development agreement provision 5.1E, which requires the existing home, which is Marty Hills, to hook up to city water and sewer service within 60 days of services becoming available from the adjacent R8 zoned property per Meridian City Code 914A, to instead require the home to be hooked up to city services within 60 days of the final platting of the estate lots. Public Works is amenable to the requested change if council agrees. In response to development agreement provision 5.1G6, which states non-residential buildings should be proportional to and blend in with residential buildings, staff recommended revised elevations be submitted for the storage facility to comply with this provision, along with concept elevations for the commercial buildings and independent living units that demonstrate a cohesive design that is proportional to and blends in with the single-family residential buildings. Or design guidelines be submitted and included in the development agreement that demonstrate consistency with this provision prior to the council meeting. Rather than revise the elevations for the storage facility, the applicant opted to submit design guidelines for the commercial portion of the development with photos of existing structures and concept elevations for the future dental, office, storage facility, and single-family residential units, independent living units, and senior living facility. And let me just clarify, this is for the commercial and residential portion of the development, not just commercial. Staff has reviewed these guidelines and elevations, and while the commercial elevations are all very consistent in design, as are the residential elevations separately, they do not blend with each other so far as sharing similar design elements, other than that they are mostly proportional in height, which doesn't entirely meet the intent of this requirement. So that is something council will need to act on tonight. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senior Council. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Cavanagh.
Sonia, can you pull up kind of one of the maps of the development? I just was curious how Mr. Hill's going to access his property. On the application, it wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, right. You just went past it. The color right there. That'll work. So do you see where the estate lots are kind of in the middle of that drawing? The print that says estate lots?
Yes.
Okay, that right below that is where Marty Hill's home is.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be accessing his home from the north and his shop. Well, actually, this drawing doesn't, I believe his shop was being accessed from the east-west street to the south, but the applicant can clarify that. It doesn't appear that there's a driveway shown on this plan, but I think that's just an aerial. I believe he's accessing his shop from the southeast or southwest, excuse me.
Thanks. I'm sure the applicant will address that for us.
Mr. Mayor.
Council Administrator.
I was hoping Sonia or someone in the Parks Department could give more of an overview on the pathway that they ideally would have wanted here, and maybe just what are we getting instead, because it seems like a pretty high traffic area. There are already issues with pedestrians in the area. So just some background on that.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if you'd like me to speak to that. I'm not sure if anyone from Parks is in the meeting.
Garrett is here. I don't know how familiar he is with this specific thing. We can defer to him, and if not, you can speak to it. Garrett?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I really don't have a whole lot of information to speak to on this, other than the fact that, you know, it's not part of the master plan. And like Sonia had said, really that's all I would have to say.
Mr. Mayor, previously, the Parks Department was looking for a 10-foot wide pathway in this location due to the location of the city park and the YMCA in this area, and just the desire to have a nicer, wider pathway in this area, and the school, of course, as well. The applicant requested removal of the condition. When push came to shove, the Parks Department agreed that it was not on their pathways master plan, but it could be placed by council as a provision in the development agreement if you so wish. I believe that there is existing 5-foot wide sidewalk adjacent to this site along these public streets. So if that occurred, that would need to be widened to 10 feet.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff at this point in time? Okay, I'll ask the applicant to come forward. I see it. Well, I'm not going to presume which one's going to be speaking, so you state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, let's get our technology established here. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't know if you are able to see us or not, but there are 5 of us in the room. This is Mike Wardle, Director of Planning for Brighton Corporation. Given authorization by Mr. Hill to file the applications on behalf. Also with us, David Turnbull, Robert Phillips, President of Brighton Corporation, Lars Hansen, President of Brighton Homes.
Mike, if I could stop you just for 1 second, we're having a real hard time hearing you. It sounds like you're away from the microphone. If someone can get closer, and no, we cannot see you, but that's okay, but we need better audio.
I hope, Mr. Mayor, it's better now.
More.
Just talk. Okay. We're in a new age of technology, are we not?
It got better, then it got really quiet.
Once again, Mike Warden, Director of Planning for Brighton.
Mike, it's not loud.
Try that mic. So where are we? Just talk right to it.
There you go.
Can you hear that, Robert?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, once again, just for the record, Mike Wardle, David Turnbull, Robert Phillips, Lars Hansen, and John Wardle are in the room. I will give kind of a brief opening. Sonia's done a great job of identifying the history of the project, which was all annexed and zoned and given conceptual approval in 2015. The easterly portion of the project that's identified on your screen, Hill Century Farm Commercial Subdivision, that easterly half of the area north of Century Farm subdivision was specifically subdivided or preliminary platted subsequent to the annexation and zoning. Obviously, the YMCA and the elementary school are in place, as is the Hillsdale City Park. There is already commercial service development in that area of the commercial subdivision. The area that we're really talking about then would be to the westerly portion, centered around the cadence, with the self-storage identified immediately adjacent to the Idaho Power Substation at the corner of Eagle and Amity, with an extension of professional and retail space along Amity going easterly to the already approved Century Farm Commercial Subdivision. We are in general agreement, but there are the few tweaks that Sonia has noted and a couple of the questions that have been asked by the council. I want to go first of all to the pathways. So I want to go to the, I believe about the the fifth slide. One more, there we go. Right, great. This shows the existing development area, for the most part, of Century Farm subdivision. The areas along Eagle Road and Amity in the yellow are already approved and basically constructed with 5-foot sidewalks that were approved by both the Ada County Highway District as well as the City of Meridian in your own development process. For instance, along Eagle Road, 3,364 linear feet of the 3,665 linear feet of approved sidewalk has already been constructed. Along Amity Road, 657 of the approved 1,020 linear feet of sidewalk has been constructed. So what the Parks Department was requesting was a 10-foot pathway in the hatched pink areas along both roadways, essentially just 1/4 of a mile long in either direction, tying into already established and approved 5-foot sidewalks. It just didn't make any sense for us to do something that somebody would have to come back in the future, because we're beyond the opportunity to widen those 5-foot sidewalks. So did they really accomplish anything? When you look at the pathway plan to the right, it shows the green, which is proposed, and a lot of that now has been completed, but all of the red pathways internal that lead from Eagle Road to the Hillsdale Park and Hillsdale Elementary School and YMCA, those multi-use pathways, 10-foot wide, have all been constructed. And we will complete the one going to the north that will tie into the existing plan. So the city didn't have a plan for these items. They were 1/4 of a mile long each, and they were essentially just left there to adjoin something that already exists that would not be improved in the future unless the city came back and did those improvements. So as a result, the Parks Department agreed that having just those 1/4 mile segments did not seem to make much sense in the context of their plan. Be happy to answer questions on that particular item if you have them. If not, I want to go to the next slide, which deals with Marty Hill's property. And this goes specifically to answer the question that I believe, well, I'm not sure which council member asked how he would take access. You can see two arrows, one coming from the north, essentially that goes more directly to the home, which orients somewhat northwesterly. And then from the cul-de-sac on the south, he does have a large shop structure. He has equipment in that would have the opportunity to take access from the back. Now the two link together candidly. And so in theory, he would have access points from the north and from the southwest. And we did note specifically in the application that we were asking essentially for the opportunity for him to continue to have access in both directions. Staff at the time of the Planning Commission request wondered if there was a plan in the future for subdividing Mr. Hill's property at some point down the line. And obviously Marty does not have any plans to do that, but we did show how with the black hatched lines that his large 2.5 acre estate could be broken up into at least 3, potentially more, but at least 3 lots under the existing structures. Any questions on that particular item? Then, Mr. Mayor, we really are down to 2 issues. They relate to the items that Sonia has brought to your attention. One being what was defined as usable space in the commercial area. And I want to go back to the commercial or to the overall site plan, which would have been the first item. There we go. Yeah, one, there you go. What's a little hard to anticipate at this point is how those retail and professional office pads will develop. And so one of the concepts that we put forward that we will obviously be able to share with staff subsequently, I don't know that we can do that at this point, but at the intersection of Tavistock Way, which is the north-south public street between the 2 commercial areas, there will be an extension of the service drive from the west to the east. And so we'll end up with an intersection opportunity where we could create a bit of a gathering place on any of those 4 corners, or perhaps all 4, with some type of at least a space that would afford a sitting area, benches or something of that nature that would give a place for gathering within the context of that overall project, but not necessarily in the center of that project. We do have a concept that we will provide to staff that we won't put forth to the council, but there is a way that we can deal with that as long as it's anticipated that it wouldn't have to be forced to be in the middle of the commercial areas, but could be kind of at the junction between the 2 on the north-south public street that connects that along to the south to the city park as well. So we do have a potential solution for that item that we will share with staff. I'm going to ask Lars Hansen to pick the question up at the moment.
This is Lars Hansen. Do I give my address? Okay.
Got it already.
Okay, so with respect to this open space that we're proposing here, this particular location is in fact between commercial uses, and at this implied intersection that we'll have with the drive aisle and Tavistock Avenue, it has a great opportunity to create a threshold really and a kind of a sense of entry to the entirety of the project, but also as a realistic stopping point for pedestrians that would be moving from those 2 commercial areas, to the park or up towards Amity. So we see that point, that node, if you will, as being a real viable and a great opportunity to create a pedestrian-oriented public experience there. So I think we have some good concept plans for that would work well with the intent of that request.
So in reality, Mike Ward, once again, that condition could stand, and I think it gives us the opportunity to work with staff to find a solution to it. And it's an opportunity that we will pursue as we get to the actual physical development of the project and have to go through the CZC and design review portion of the effort. Any questions about that particular item? Because I think we have really one more that we need to address. Well, Mr. Mayor, council members, then going on page 38 of the staff report, and Sonia alluded to it, there was a nice big not approved stamp over the top of the elevations proposed for the self-service storage on Amity Road. The particular concern that Sonia just articulated a few minutes ago was the blending of those particular commercial uses with the residential. We have concerns that we want to address in the form of the design guidelines that were provided, and I'm going to turn the time to John Gordon and perhaps David Turnbull to talk about this particular. Okay, you want to go through the elevations and the elevations, which would be the Sonia, if you can to the elevations of our presentation, which would be
around page 20.
Hey, John, we can't hear you.
Can you go to page? Can we try to go to page 20 of the PDFs that are up in front of you?
Can you forward this?
They're doing it now.
Okay, thanks. This is Lars Hansen again. Just wanted to speak to the architectural, the context here that we're working within. And as you can see, there's some really high quality commercial buildings that have been constructed here in this area, which have, fine detailing and are great, additions to this area. We seek to complement and continue with the aesthetic that's been established in this area, I think is a overarching, benefit to this location. The commercial design guidelines that we provided show that intent to continue with that high quality design and materiality that's been present in this area. What's unique about our site plan, if you could just move to, just back 2 slides to look at the overall site plan. Thank you. Okay, so in looking at what we have as far as context here and also the arrangement of the various uses, and you can see that there's a continuity between the structures that face Amity, starting from the school, then to the corner of Amity and Hillsdale, and going out to facing on the north side, the commercial that we have along Amity, and having that continuity remain as that, logical street-facing element seemed to be a good benefit to us in maintaining that quality of architecture. But then, as you approach the corner there at Eagle Road and Amity, obviously we have as the primary element there, the electrical substation. And as we were looking at the layouts for this piece and trying to, find ways to properly buffer and transition from that industrial component to other more sensitive uses, having this storage facility here as a transitional piece to the commercial made a lot of sense. And then also as a soft transition to the residential to the south, they're backing up to one another, not facing, in any way. So they don't share a relationship between the residential and the storage unit in any way that they're perceived as, an integrated whole, but more the storage unit provides a transition between, again, the industrial, substation and the commercial uses. So in as much as that's the case, we felt it was appropriate to have the storage facility emulate the architecture, the high quality designs that are present in the commercial uses throughout the project already. Ideally, we feel that the storage facility should be essentially a background building. It well articulated and well proportioned, matching the commercial, but essentially not drawing undue attention to itself with details that might be distracting or overly complex or ornate, for lack of a better word there. So that was an intentional desire to make it match with the commercial for those reasons. So are there any questions regarding that, those comments?
Council, any questions? And I think I saw on the timer that we are near the applicant's end of their 15 minutes. I don't know if there's more that you guys have, John or Mike, or if we've reached your presentation.
We don't have any additional items, those are the two specifically. And it's our feeling that the design, perhaps as we get to CZC and design review on the self-storage structures, might be looking at color elements that might be more blending, but certainly the design is consistent with what's happened throughout the community, as well as in the project itself.
Thank you. Council.
Mr. Mayor, can I just interject one thing? This is David Turnbull.
Yes.
And I appreciate that Sonia's dealing with code issues that she's trying to address, but it's our strong opinion that the residential needs to reflect residential and the commercial needs to reflect commercial, and try to make one look like the other or somehow morph into the other is just an exercise in futility and won't yield a result that will be good for anybody, including the city.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Mayor, this is Luke.
Councilman Cavanagh.
I've got a question, I think, for fire, but it pertains to at least some of the comments that the applicant made. I don't know if now's the appropriate time, if we want to wait until the public hearing is closed or until the public hearing part has finished.
I'll leave that up to you. If you'd like to ask them now, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if Joe Bongiorno's on or can speak, but I'm just curious if there were any comments or considerations from fire about how you're going to get your trucks to be able to kind of get to and through Mr. Hill's home and shop.
Mr. Mayor and Councilman Cavanagh, thank you for the question. That is a good question. I know Sonia asked, so if the gentleman can address how we're getting to his house, and then obviously we need to make sure that there's a fire hydrant nearby, and his driveway is obviously going to be over 150 feet long, so we're going to need to make sure that there's a turnaround out there that's fire truck friendly, that meets the code. So we have not discussed this project, Mr. Hill's property in specifically.
Council, any further questions at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Councilman Schrader.
Question for Sonia and staff. Sounds like a pretty good compromise in the context of the overall development to do some type of a enhancement at that intersection of where the road is and those two different commercial uses meet. Do you think during design review we could have a requirement that everyone get on the same page during design review Is that adequate to address that need for an amenity in the commercial in your view, and also considerations about the storage? And I understand, storage is often quite ugly looking, for lack of a better term. And so hopefully there's a way to sort of enhance it without making it a distraction for people.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilwoman Strader, I believe that we can work with the applicant and at the administrative level, a certificate of zoning compliance application on the provision of a gathering area, plaza area within the commercial portion of the development. However, staff does need guidance on the applicant's somewhat lack of compliance with the consistency between the residential and the commercial elevations per our comprehensive plan. Staff's direction was directly from the comprehensive plan. So if council can provide some direction to staff on what they would like to see, if the applicant's proposed design guidelines are good, then that's great. Just please say so, and we'll go with that. If you feel that the applicant needs to provide more common design elements between the commercial and residential, I would like that direction as well. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Pearl.
Sonia, I'd like some clarification, I guess, from you. Is there specifics on, I can see from the photographs the obvious difference between the elevations, but can you give some more detail as to what's missing between the two, so that I guess what I feel like is happening is that we're sort of telling the applicant, like, keep sending suggestions until one looks good, and then we will move forward. Are we able to give the applicant some more specifics on what it is that we're expecting and they're not meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Perot, Council, the comprehensive plan, one of the provisions in the comprehensive plan calls for non-residential buildings to be proportional to and blend in with residential buildings. And that's in the mixed use neighborhood designation. Mixed use areas, typically we want to have some common design elements to integrate the residential and the commercial development. So that's what we're after. Form-wise, height-wise, we're pretty much there, I think, between the two. We don't, for instance, have single story next to 3-story buildings or 4-story, but there are no common design elements between the residential and the commercial.
Mr. Mayor, a follow-up, if I may?
Yep, Councilwoman Pearl.
Sonia, so you're talking about things like the materials that are used, maybe some similar landscape elements. Is that generally what you're talking about, or like roof lines being similar?
Roof lines are big. All of the commercial concept elevations are pretty consistent with their roof lines, as are the residential. There's just nothing to tie them together. So it's just some sort of, I don't want to direct the applicant. I'm not trying to design their project. They just need to comply with the comprehensive plan.
Mr.
And
Mayor.
if you don't feel that, if you feel that they are, then it's within your purview to propose or to, approve their design guidelines and concept elevations.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the applicant's slide or your slide, Sonia. Somebody was showing Hillsdale Elementary and the YMCA. Can we go back to those photos?
Yeah. I'm not sure if they were in the applicants or mine. I
Yeah,
know as well. Yeah.
There those photos there. To me, and if you go back to the elementary school, they are I think back one more. Yeah, that's the elementary school. And then the Y and the elementary school and the Y are very similar. All of them have, a flat roof and steel structure or wood structure coming out. And to me, it was they're the same, for commercial structures, they were tied together. I'm not a fan of that type of style. So these were built and they're in place now. And now we're going to come in, and that was approved. And now we want the houses to have some design elements similar. And I'm of the mind that I wouldn't want my house to have any of that design. I mean, to me, it's commercial. It's a school, it's a Y, it's, you know, a health facility, and there's other structures. I don't know how you tie that together in a way that makes a house look attractive to a buyer. But again, design is not something that there's one way to do it and everyone likes that one way. Everyone has their different tastes. But to me, I struggle with saying, oh, the house has got to look something like this or some element of it. And for this situation, I just don't see it. But that's just my take on it.
Mr. Mayor, Council, if I may kind of respond, you know, typically in the mixed use neighborhood designated areas, they're smaller neighborhood serving type of uses. And they do more closely match the residential. A lot of them will have, you know, sloped roof lines rather than the flat roofs. That's what we're looking for. This development's a little different in that there are larger, more commercial uses, you know, the YMCA, the medical office buildings. So it is a little more difficult, I think, in this situation.
So, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Parsons.
Yes, if I can kind of elaborate on this discussion that I'm hearing this evening. So certainly this type of facility, I think the intent that staff was trying to get at, and I heard some of those comments from Councilwoman Perot, is yes, certainly building elements, the same building materials play into that. Landscaping certainly plays into that. Color schemes play into that. And I think the applicant has done a very nice job. They actually built a facility out in Paramount, in their Paramount development, that included a lot of the same colors and design elements as their commercial office buildings out there. And so I think from our perspective, as you look at the comprehensive plan and you see the standards, or at least the guidelines that speak to complementary design and integration, I think that was the intent that staff was trying to go for, is making sure that color schemes, design themes, certain architectural embellishments that are on the commercial portion of the building can also be incorporated into the storage facility. So it does look like it is an integrated development. And I think the applicant probably should ask them if that's something that they can do with this development, because certainly the Paramount Storage, I think, is one of the nicer storage facilities that we have in Meridian today. It's definitely an elevated design from what we typically see out there.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Perot.
So thank you for that, Bill. I think that probably gives more clarity to it than anything I've heard so far. I agree with Councilman Hoagland, which is why I asked that question, because obviously commercial and residential are intended to look a little bit different. And I think the challenge for the applicant here is that there are already large existing commercial structures, and if they tie their resident or their retail and their storage to look like the residential piece, then now it doesn't look like the other commercial pieces that are already there. And so it's going to have to be something where they find this middle ground. And I understand why they might have made the commercial design similar to the other commercial projects that are already built, to tie all the commercial in and the residential in separately. But I think what Mr. Parsons just stated, that the color schemes, just a general feeling that all of this is in the same development, is not the same thing as saying that the roof lines or the you know, that the commercial structures need to look residential and residential structures need to look commercial, which is I guess it is. It's a difficult thing to interpret, but as Mr. Parsons suggested, would it be possible for us to ask the applicant if there's anything more that they could do to make all of this look like it at least is part of the same project like they've done in Paramount?
More than happy to. We're still in the applicant question period, so I'll ask the applicant if they'd like to respond.
Thank you.
Hold on. Okay, can you hear me well now?
Yep.
This is Lars Hansen again. So yes, I think that's a great approach would be to make sure that the materiality is consistent on the new structures in color and type. The elevations that were proposed for the storage facility show perhaps some cooler colors and some masonry that we could modify to be more consistent with the existing elements. So to bring that into a similarity with the other structures would be something we'd definitely be willing to do.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. If especially the storage, I think we have found in the past that the storage in particular can end up being kind of an eyesore. But I just so Sonia has some feedback. To me, the most important aspect of that part of the comprehensive plan in this instance is that there is a good continuity with the whole development. I think the worst thing that could happen would be for half of the commercial that already exists to look completely different than the other half of the commercial on the same street. So like, I think as we're applying that part of the comprehensive plan, like the context is really important. And I do take to heart the fact that the residences do not face the commercial piece of the development. And so I think in this case, to me, just one person, but my opinion is it's more important for the whole continuity of the whole development, as opposed to just, you know, this specific area, if that makes sense.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
to that point, the design guidelines that were proposed, they're referenced and attached to the staff report, speak to this very issue and talk about the blending of the colors and tones with the commercial and the storage units all together. In light of that discussion, Sonia, is there any concern over utilizing those design guidelines as the framework to that solving this issue?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I don't have any issues with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any further questions for the applicant or staff at this time?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Perot.
I had one more question for staff. Something that was mentioned in the staff report was that council would need to approve the 2 accesses to the Hill property, and I did not see that in the list of outstanding issues for council. So I wanted to find out if the staff wants to make sure that we mention that in our deliberation and our motions today.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Councilwoman Perot, I believe that was part of the planned unit development wrapped into that. So there's no need for you to act separately on that.
Thank you.
Just the outstanding issues on your hearing outline for council are really the ones that need to be addressed.
Okay. With that, Adrian, did we have anyone sign up in advance to testify?
Mr. Mayor, we did not.
Okay. Well, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody who is listening who would like to provide testimony on this item? If so, you can please raise your hand to alert the clerk and I'll bring you in for comment.
Mr. Mayor, this is Chris. There are no hands being raised.
Okay. With that, I guess I'll turn it back over to the applicant to see if they'd like to make any additional comments.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Mike Wardle. We don't have any additional issues. I think they've been discussed. I think the council's direction seems clear and hopeful for being able to deal with these at the CZC and design review stage of the process. So the only one question that I would respond to was the one put to fire department relative to Mr. Hill's access. It actually will be a to and through. There would be an ability for any vehicular access to come in southwest corner or the north side and actually be able to pass through the property. So from a fire perspective, there would not be any impediment for access to and through.
Awesome. Thank you.
With that, we will leave it to the council's discussion and discretion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pearl.
I guess at this point, I will move that we close the public hearing for Hill Century Farm North H20190134.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a comment.
Okay, Councilwoman Schrader.
Appreciate the application before us. I know they did a very nice job on the Cadence property in Paramount. I am thrilled that we're not seeing additional students enter the West Ada School District in this incredibly overcrowded area, and think it's a good use for the property. I'm supportive of the application with the caveat that during design review, they work with planning staff to iron out the details.
Okay. Any other comments from council at this time?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
just to go over notes of what I compiled on these decision points from what I think the collective conversation is on the outstanding issues, the DA provision 5.1G, 2 little i's that talked about open space in the commercial component. That would remain to be facilitated as discussed by the applicant, most likely on the corners of the project. So more of a location issue than, so I don't think that provision gets stricken. That's how I took it. But the second issue with regards to the pathway, that request still is that with that explanation that gets removed. The third with regards to condition number 13, that we would approve that as part of the PUD approval as well. And then the last one would, with regards to the storage unit and blending its design rather than providing new elevations, the solution would be utilizing the proposed design guidelines that were presented to facilitate the solution for the storage unit appearance. But I don't know if that missed anything that we've all discussed.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Burnt.
Mr. Borton, did you want to include something in there about Marty Hill's connection to city water and sewer?
That's the last one. Yep. Which it didn't sound like anyone had any objection to from our city staff.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pearl.
the one thing that I just realized I should have asked the applicant about, but so we're going to have a 55+ community that's backing up to a storage facility, and the city code has the hours as 6 to 11. And my hope is that those retail locations and the retail that ends up going in and the storage facilities, maybe their hours would be a little bit just not so late, maybe 10 p.m. And even though I don't have a question for the applicant, I'm wondering if we should make a suggestion, or I guess we could include it and a requirement that the hours not be held so late since it is right next to residential. What do the council members think about that? I know it's very common with storage units for people to be there late.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
having dealt with other commercial ventures that were near residential in my previous stint on council, the hours established 6 to 11 are pretty standard. I don't know why we'd carve out an exception there. You know, we had an issue with the McDonald's over here on Cherry and what their hours were. So, you know, that since that was the standard business hours, we left it at that. I mean, certainly we can always put that in for there, but I don't know why we do some commercial or storage facilities that back up to residential. And there's quite a few. There's one on Chinden was on that we approved that had those hours, and it was against residential. I don't know if we'd want to have that disparity out there. That's my only comment on that.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I appreciate so much our council members kind of being sensitive to potential residents and things of that nature. I urge caution though about creating a certain exception for a particular business. As we've seen these facilities kind of build up around Meridian, to my understanding, I don't think I've ever received a noise complaint or a letter from a citizen who's upset about the noise that are coming out of these buildings. They're not something where there's a lot of traffic in there on a daily basis. And my belief is that the vast majority of our citizens that are using these are going to be using them, you know, daytime hours on weekends. So I just think it's a dangerous precedent for us to start carving out. If we want to take a larger look at the hours that we want to let storage units operate, I think that's a great conversation, but picking out something well intended for one particular business is not something I think we should look at this time.
Council, any further comments, or would someone like to proceed with the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
I will make a motion on this application. I move that we approve item 5E, H 2019-0134, to include, as presented in the staff report and following our discussion, which will it will keep as one of the conditions that 5.1G 2i with regards to open common usable areas within the commercial component, which will be incorporated as discussed by the applicant and staff in today's hearing, that the condition with regards to the 10-foot pathway be removed in light of what was presented, that condition number 13, allowing the exception for a building permit to be issued for the community center prior to the private streets receiving final approval, be permitted as part of the PUD exceptions to the code standards. That condition 5.1E, which requires the existing home to hook up to city water and services within 60 days of service becoming available from the adjacent R8 zoned property. And finally, that with regards to provision 5.1G VI, Roman numeral 6, that the storage unit design will be consistent and subject to the applicant's proposed design guidelines, which are presented and attached to the staff report for today's application. And that the solution with regards to Mr. Hill's driveway and fire access be incorporated as presented in today's hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Hoagland.
Just to question Councilman Borton on the 60 days for Marty Hill's hook up to sewer and water. That allows him to hook up to city services within 60 days of the final platting of the estate lots. Is that what you wanted to include?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If there's no further comments, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I lost my roll call, so I'm going to go off of memory. Please excuse me if I get it mixed up. Borton,
Aye.
Cavanagh,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Hoagland,
Aye.
Burnt.
Aye.
Nice job.
Good job, Adrian.
Oh, sorry about that.
Perfect.
Otherwise, motion passes. Item 6, future meeting topics. Do we have anything under item 6?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh?
not maybe a topic, but not necessarily. I'm just curious. I noticed that the public comment portion has kind of went away from our agenda. I assume that went away from this virtual environment where we don't know when we're all going to be back in council chambers. My hope is that your guys' next agenda setting meeting that we can look to find a way to incorporate that in this virtual environment. I think it's a good opportunity for our citizens to be able to provide feedback to us, ask questions while they're watching from home.
Okay.
Consider it done.
Is there any further items? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burr.
I move that we adjourn the meeting. Actually, no, not yet. We're gonna go do an executive session.
Correct.
I move that we go into executive session, Pareto Code 74-206D.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor, are we going into the same meeting we had previously?
No.
Mr. Mayor, this is Chris. Per Mr. Neri's direction, I just emailed you a new link to an executive session. This will end and I will restart it, but you'll go to that executive session and then come back to during the meeting here.
Okay. Perfect. Clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton,
Aye.
Cavanagh,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Hoagland,
Aye.
Burnt.
Aye.
All ayes. We will adjourn into executive session.